Good afternoon. Can we get underway? Well, first of all, thank you very much for coming along this afternoon, and I really appreciate you giving us some time. I'd like to make a couple of remarks and then very happy to open it up for any questions that you've got. You know, it has been such an extraordinary time in this airline, and I reflect it's almost coming to the end of my 7th week, and I can vividly recall when we made the decision on literally my first day, happened to be Sunday the 2nd of February, to make the decision to pull out of Shanghai. So as you can appreciate, since that time I've been focused on ensuring that Air New Zealand has the very best chance of coming out on the other side of the impact of COVID-19. I'm pretty sure the airline's going to be a little bit smaller than what it was before we went in, because there'll be a little bit of time before demand returns. So I've got about 30 minutes to chat with you today, and then I've got to leave because, as you can imagine, we've got a lot happening at the moment, and I'll be meeting with more of my team to discuss actions that we'll be taking. A few perspectives that I'd like to share with you. Firstly, I want to thank our customers. What a trying time it's been as we have pared back our schedule pretty regularly over the last 7 weeks, and you can imagine if you're travelling either domestically or particularly even internationally, how difficult that's been to see that literally every few days we're changing our schedules in light of what's going on. So our call centres, our customer care centres are having to deal with that, and for all our customers I just want to say thank you. Thanks for your patience. We understand, and we're doing our very best to look after you. Secondly, to our 12,500 Air New Zealanders, what an awesome job you are doing at this point in what is really unprecedented conditions for us. And I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for what you're doing to not only look after our customers, but look after yourselves as we deal with this. Lastly, I would like to appreciate our stakeholders, and especially the 4 unions that represent 8,000 of our staff. You know, over this week I've spent a lot of time sitting down with ETU, with AMEA, with our pilot unions, and working through how we're going to make good, constructive decisions together over the next few weeks. You'll be aware also that today we've announced that we've secured a loan facility up to $900 million from the government. And I'd like to say that Government and Treasury have been terrific as we've worked through this over the last week. There's been plenty of long days and long nights and working through weekends, but it's been very positive, and we've negotiated this loan on commercial terms, which you've seen. And naturally, I'll be happy to speak some more about that in our Q&A. And finally, to set some context for our conversation, it's important to ground ourselves in Air New Zealand over the next few months. You know, we were operating 3,600 flights a week. That's going to fall to below 1,500 over the next few weeks. So this business looks different, feels different to the one that it was 7 weeks ago, and it's likely to be that way over the next few months. We do have a responsibility, obviously, to move people around the country, and we take that very seriously, as we do with any repatriation efforts working through with the government, and obviously cargo. Thank you again for coming today, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Greg, Madison from Newshub. Is $900 million enough?
Hey, Madison, thanks for the question. You know, as we've gone through our forecasts and worked that out, $900 million is the right number for us. I can't speculate any more than anyone else on how long this will go and the impact, but based on our best forecast, we're very happy with that number.
How much did you ask for?
We asked for $900 million, and that's exactly what we got.
How long does that keep you going for, realistically?
Well, once again, difficult to speculate. A lot of it depends on a whole bunch of assumptions that we have to make, and they are really pretty loose assumptions because as we all think about it in this room, we're seeing a situation evolve and change. But I'm happy that that $900 million sees us through for as long as what we believe is going to be required.
But if this goes into 3, 6, 12 months, are you going to have to go back cap in hand to the government?
Once again, I don't want to speculate on how long this goes on. We're using the best information that we have in hand, and I believe this puts us in a very good position over the next several months.
Were the banks unable to help you? No policy in New Zealand?
You know, we've spoken with banks and continue to do so. You know, this industry is one which is going through a lot of change, not just in New Zealand, but around the world, as we all know in this room. And so securing finance quickly was something that was very important to us, and working through with the government, who are a major stakeholder, seemed the appropriate course of action to take, and you can see the terms of that loan, and we wanted to get on and do that quickly.
Did you go to the banks though?
What does it cost to...
Wait to a microphone so the people online can hear you.
Apologies.
Hi, Grant.
Hi, Greg. What does it cost to run the airline in present circumstances and in the future after you've done your right sizing? What's a weekly cost?
Well, we're still working through those numbers, and once again, they're based on all kinds of assumptions. I'm not expecting that we're going to see a massively quick rebound out of this grant, and you know, we're taking into account what we think are the right assumptions on growth back up again, and you know, that's something which is a moving target for us. We know, you know, what it takes to operate this business today, and we're forecasting what we think it will be in the future.
So how much is that? How much is that? Have you got a number on that?
That's not a number that I'm prepared to share.
Can you talk to us a little bit about the layoffs? How many people have already lost their jobs? How many people will lose their jobs? What areas will that be? And where are you shoring up resources?
You know, we've been pretty clear right from when this became obvious that we were dealing with a significant event, that about up to 30% of the workforce felt like the right number, and we've been working through with all of our unions on that number. There are a number of options in terms of how we handle that. Leave without pay is one. People taking leave is another. People working on a part-time basis, a third option that we can investigate. You know, voluntary exit is another one which we'll be discussing and working through. And of course, if we need to take redundancies, we take redundancies. The mix of those is going to be different across different sections of the business because people operate at different rates of pay. And I'm just thrilled with the way that as an organisation over the last couple of weeks, all of the organisation has engaged in this. There's been several meetings in here, many meetings late into the night as we've worked through that. I've just come out of one this morning that went for 3.5 hours. And we'll pull together that appropriately with all our staff over the next couple of weeks. The
government says $600 million can be available almost immediately. When are you going to draw on that, and what will it be spent on?
Yeah, there's two tranches in the loan, isn't there? There's the $600 million and then the $300 million. Once again, our forecasts at this stage, based on the assumptions, would indicate that that's not going to be necessary in the near term. But if this goes on for months after months after month, then that facility is available. But I don't want to speculate on when that happens because I don't know exactly based on the fact that this is an evolving situation.
Greg, can you please just clarify that even with this $900 million loan from the government, that 30% of your workforce will still lose their jobs?
You know, it's appropriate for us to get the business set, not just for today, but also for the future. And as we think about the environment that we're going to be faced with as we come out of COVID-19, and at some point we will, there's going to be two things that rest on all of our minds. The first one is the state of the economy at that point and how people are going to feel about travelling. And the second one is the state of the competition. New Zealand does not, Air New Zealand does not operate in isolation. It's easy to take a plane which is over $200 million and drop it into New Zealand. We would expect that the airline industry will look different at the end of this. Not all airlines are going to survive. Others that are born out of this particular event are likely to operate in a slightly different way than some of the competitors today. So part of my mind is absolutely focused on the near term. What do we need to do today to ensure that we can continue to operate? And I think we've made good steps down that regard. But the other part of my mind is, what do we need to do to ensure that we're successful for the next 80 years? And so it is appropriate that we take the actions that we do.
Sorry to ask again, but is that a yes or a no on the 30% of your workforce still going?
As I've said, we will work on up to 30%. It will be different across different parts of the business, and that's a discussion that we're engaging in right now and have made wonderful progress with our union partners.
And what do you make of the interest that this government loan is attracting?
This is a commercial facility, and this is an industry that is under significant pressure right around the globe. And, as I talk to some of my colleagues who operate other airlines in other countries, it's clear that, we need to pay the right amounts, and our objective is, hopefully, we don't need it, but if we do, it's there. And if we do use it, part of our objective will be to pay it back as quickly as we can.
What is your repayment timeline?
The details of that in terms of how that sits are actually in the agreement.
So that's within the 24 months you need to pay that back?
That's what's written into the agreement, and that would be our objective. We'll see how that goes.
And just a couple of questions here from the gallery. The Finance Minister isn't ruling out the renationalisation of Air New Zealand. How likely is that with this loan agreement having to possibly be converted to equity?
Once again, I don't want to speculate on those sort of things. We're dealing with a situation here that is evolving. It was appropriate for us to get in place these levels of funding so that we could take that off the table and get on and do what's right for not only New Zealanders, but 12,500 Air New Zealanders. Let's see what evolves over the next few weeks and months. We're in a good position at the moment. I feel comfortable with the actions that we're taking. We'll worry about those sort of things later.
Thanks.
Hi, John Anthony from Stuff. I heard the Finance Minister speak this morning, and he said that Air New Zealand was in discussions with the Ministry of Health about redeploying some of those staff which may be made redundant to help with the response to COVID-19. How many staff do you see could potentially work for the Ministry of Health from Air New Zealand?
Well, once again, that's something that is absolutely on the table, and as we think about something like a leave without pay option, and that's an area that we're keenly pursuing with our staff through our unions, then that's certainly an option, and that is, underway at the moment. I don't have numbers in terms of that because that is something which is unfolding as we speak. But I hope that a number of our Air New Zealanders do take up that option, as I do with many other opportunities that are out there.
And one more question while I've got the opportunity. The interest rates are quite high on that facility. How confident are you that Air New Zealand can maintain those interest repayments?
We are a resilient airline, and I think we've proven that over many years. I may be new to Air New Zealand, but I can tell you in 7 weeks I've met plenty of customers and have spent time with plenty of our staff. We're going to get through this. I'm very confident of that. At some point, we'll see bookings begin to grow and we'll start putting some more flights back on. I can't speculate as to exactly when that is. I'm comfortable that we've put in place the right funding arrangements at this point for the airline, and we're in a good position to continue to operate with the support of not only our customers but with the government.
Separately, you've said that you're also negotiating to ensure that there are key services in place, and we have heard that there are potentially some mercy missions to help bring home some New Zealanders who are in remote locations and so forth. How much of your time has been taken up with that initiative, and what kind of advances have you made there? What have you identified so far?
Yeah, look, At the moment, not too much of our time is taken up with that, and that's because we're still flying, albeit a skeleton international network. So if you need to get out of the US, you can still get out of the US. If you need to get out of Asia, if you can get yourself to Hong Kong and Singapore, you can do that. Same with Australia. That may change at some point as we look at load factors, but at this point you can still fly on an Air New Zealand plane and get home. If there are requirements for locations where we do not fly, then that is something that we're absolutely keen to discuss with the government and provide whatever support we can.
We've just got a couple of questions on the audio line. Perhaps we'll just break and take those before we come back to the room.
Your next question comes from Steve Greedy from Airline Ratings. Please go ahead.
Hi, Greg. I was just wondering whether the decision by the Australian and New Zealand governments to shut the borders effectively has had any impact on your capacity reductions and where they stand now.
Yeah, sure. So when that decision by New Zealand was made at 4:30 last Saturday, that really changed a lot of our approach to things. We had planned for that scenario, but when it came into effect, that really changed the way that we would think about our international network and led to a number of decisions that the team have made this week, and they're very appropriate. And, you know, we continue to scenario play.
Your next question comes from Adrian Schofield from Aviation Week. Please go ahead.
So thanks a lot. I'm just curious whether you're considering pulling some other levers regarding the fleet, like deferring more deliveries, early retirements, or perhaps raising money on some of the fleet.
Yeah, look, at this stage, we've got an evolving situation on our hands, and nearly all of our efforts at this point are focused on what do we need to do today, what do we need to do for the rest of the week, what do we see coming down the pipeline over the next couple of weeks. Increasingly, as we build muscle to deal with this evolving situation, and as it starts to, I guess, settle down a little bit, we'll consider all kinds of options, but at this stage our focus is on dealing what we've got in front of us right today.
Back to you, Grant.
Could you just outline the pay cuts that the leadership has taken, and what scope there is for more now that you're going to be running a much smaller airline?
Yeah. I think as we've announced, you've seen the directors take a cut in fees. Our executive team have taken pay cuts. We've announced that. And we believe that we're all in this together. We're looking at all levers. There's a real camaraderie in this organisation to ensure that we make the right decisions as a team, Grant, and we're going to get through this together and come out the other side. No one's trying to, I guess, not opt in. In fact, increasingly what I'm finding is that all of our staff, all of our suppliers are really wanting Air New Zealand to win in this unprecedented time, and I'm just thrilled with the reaction from everyone.
When you look at airlines collapsing around the world or stopping international flights like they have in Australia, do you in some ways feel relief or lucky that Air New Zealand is majority owned by the government?
I think it's fortunate that we have the shareholder backing and base that we do. I don't want to rely on that. I think that we will be at full potential, will be our best when we think about ourselves as a really well-oiled, well-run business. And, you know, that's why we want to get on and make the decisions that we're making around right-sizing the business appropriately. You know, we want to run a great business, and you know, I just say I am thankful that between Treasury and Government, they have been terrific this week as we've pulled this together.
And also there's a lot of confusion for people around the world and in the Pacific in particular about how long flights are going to go on for, what that means for passengers, people who are Kiwis and others who are stuck in the Pacific, for example. What kind of reassurances can you give to them?
That as soon as we can get back up in the air and fly, that's exactly what we want to do. You know, I've only been here 7 weeks, but there's one thing that is a real standout to me. People in Air New Zealand love flying. They don't have any joy of watching a 787 Dreamliner or a 777-300 or 200 parked up, and they want that in the air, and we want to be out there serving customers as quickly as we can. So when it's appropriate for us to get back in the air and start getting around not just to the Pacific Islands but other countries, then we'll be back out there.
Greg, in the absence of this loan, how likely was the prospect of Air New Zealand completely going under?
You know, any business, when it's faced with the change in revenue that we were faced with, you know, an 85% reduction in revenue from international, and that will probably go down even smaller, you know, a 60 to 70% reduction in revenue in domestic now. You can't take costs out of your business quick enough to be able to do that. So, you know, it is appropriate that we put that in place. The assumptions as to how long that, you know, this particular event goes determines how quickly you burn cash, and also what actions you take short term in order to lessen the burning of cash. So a really appropriate move that we've taken. I'm glad that we've done it. We've got out there in front of it early with the support of the government and Treasury to do this, and I think it puts us in a good position now to focus on getting ourselves right-sized, and then importantly building an airline which we're all going to be really proud of going into the future.
Can you confirm that you've already cut some staff's pay, including pilots?
We have taken action in terms of the board, in terms of the executive, and we're in discussions around what we're doing elsewhere, and that's where we're at this point.
I have two questions. One is, are you going to continue to maintain the domestic routes that you said you were going to earlier on when you announced the first round of cutbacks?
Yeah, so what's happening at the moment in terms of domestic routes is we are seeing, and I guess not surprisingly, a reasonably significant impact, and you just heard me give the number there. So there's been some tactical cancellations, and I'm sure our customers are experiencing that, where we might have been flying, you know, Auckland to Wellington X number of times, and we've now reduced that down. We'll continue to review that. Our objective is to try and make sure that New Zealand remains connected so people can get around, but clearly we've also got some commercial responsibilities, and we don't necessarily want to be flying completely empty planes. But at this point, the network remains intact. The frequency of flights is what's being altered, and that's appropriate based on the demand that we're seeing.
And the second thing I'd like to know a bit more about is cargo, and to what extent are you able to reestablish some, I guess, air freight and services through China and Asia and or Europe, where there's been some affected areas? So
we have seen an uptake in cargo, and that's not surprising based on what's happening with people's supply chains around the world. And we want to do two things there, obviously take an advantage of that commercially, but also do what's right by New Zealand and move cargo appropriately. So the team are looking at that. I know for sure that Shanghai is an area where we're seeing quite a good demand for cargo. We're obviously not flying there in terms of passengers. How do we then, you know, pencil a flight to make sure that it works for cargo is something that we are absolutely looking at the moment.
Thanks very much. I think we'll wrap it up there. Greg's got some travel for his next meeting, but if you've got any more questions, get in touch with me directly.
Thank you very much, everyone. I really appreciate you coming along, and I just want to say thank you for your support for Air New Zealand. It means a lot to all of our 12,500 staff that keep this business running, and I appreciate it greatly. Thank you.